Hello, my name is Edwin Garcia, and welcome back to the Chicago Sky in the Shy podcast. We have a lot to talk about because a lot has happened since the last episode. The Sky have completed their Olympic break. The Sky have also played 2 games coming back from break and split both of those games. And we're entering the final 10 games of the season. We're going to talk about all this and more in today's episode. Let's get into it. So Chicago Sky completed their Olympic break. They are back from break, but let's talk a little bit about what happened in break. Obviously, the main thing that happened is Team USA won the gold. The traditional national team won gold. They ran through the competition to win their 7th straight Olympic gold medal. So the most dominant team in really basketball history, Team USA, the women's side, has just been absolutely spectacular. They won the gold, beating Japan 90-75. A lot of great players, obviously, on the Team USA team. Unfortunately, no Chicago Sky players. But for me, personally, the player of the tournament for Team USA was A'ja Wilson. I think she was dynamic and explosive from start to finish, and she really carried the team during important stretches on the offensive and the defensive side of the basketball court. So I feel like she was the star, and I think even with everyone kind of acknowledging that, she still didn't get quite enough love. So I want to shout out A'ja Wilson. Absolutely phenomenal player. It's hard to believe the team would be as successful without her on it. And I'm looking forward to the future of Team USA basketball. And we saw some closer games this year than other years, but ultimately they brought home the gold. They did their job. They've won 7 in a row. To me, the most dominant team ever. The men's team, I believe, from the 1930s to 1960s did the same thing. So in the next Olympics in Paris, they'll have a chance to get 8 gold medals in a row. Incredible. Just absolutely incredible if they can do it. So definitely be rooting for them when that comes up. And for now, we're going to just applaud them and be, thankful we got to see such a historic moment this year. Basketball has another competition in the Olympics now. 3x3 basketball happened for the first time in the Olympics. 3x3 has been growing and growing. It's been growing internationally. It's been growing locally. It's been growing thanks to things like the Big 3 tournament that Ice Cube actually runs during the summer that has like former NBA players. That kind of brought it to light a little bit more. And FIBA's really been pushing 3x3, and luckily they were able to get it into the Olympics, which, kind of solidifies it more, puts it more in the forefront of people's minds, and gives it, global attention, not just national attention, but global attention to the sport and to how it's a little bit different than traditional 5-on-5 basketball. And Team USA qualified for the Olympics in 3x3, which we've talked about before, and our very own Stephanie Dolson, Chicago Sky player, was part of the team and competed in Tokyo for the gold medal. And luckily, Team USA's 3x3 team was able to pull it off. They won it in a fantastic, historic, very first ever 3x3 gold medal. It was very exciting to see Team USA play at such a high level and be able to get the job done, able to win the gold medal. 3x3 is very unique. It's a much shorter game. And the games were going on very quickly, literally like a 10-minute game, and it's done. So, and they would play 2 games, essentially not back to back, but on the same day. And that's what happened with Team USA. They qualified for the semifinals, and they beat France 18-16, and then they went on to the gold medal match and beat the Russian Olympic Committee 18-15. So really it was a fantastic competition. Team USA dominated. They won all but one game. They lost one of their group stage matches, and it was competitive. I mean, you see the numbers: 18-16, 18-15 for the semifinals and the finals respectively. So the margin for error in 3x3 basketball is very, very small. And for me personally, watching the Olympic 3x3 basketball, it was the highest level of 3x3 I've ever seen. Incredibly fast, incredibly physical, incredibly aggressive, incredibly short, the amount of errors you can really make. It's 3 players on the court, obviously, and you only have 1 bench player. Coach can't really be involved. It's very exciting, and after watching so much more 3x3 this year, and then covering the Olympics and covering Stephanie Dolson winning the Olympic medal, I think the future of the sport is very, very bright, and I'm looking forward to seeing, can we potentially get a WNBA tournament in 3x3? Can we get the guys to step their game up and qualify? Can we get NBA players playing 3x3. I'm really looking forward to the future of basketball in this aspect. I think there's a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for fun and like a different kind of experience, because it really is a different experience watching 3x3 versus watching 5-on-5. So I'm really curious to see what happens next. And it was amazing for Team USA to get the victory and to win the gold medal. Obviously for Stephanie Dolson, what a fantastic moment winning it in Tokyo, and all of Skytown I'm sure was cheering and rooting. The games were very, very early, as everyone who watched any Olympics knows. We're talking 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 9 in the morning. Everything was early, odd times for America, but it worked out wonderfully. We all made the sacrifices and got the coffee or stayed up, and it was great to see. I personally watched every single Team USA 3x3 game, and I on my website skyintheshy.wordpress.com, you can go there, and I have breakdowns of every single game that happened on the day, like the day of games when they played 2 games. And I also got a chance to talk to Stephanie Dolson during the media availability, and there's some quotes from her in the articles where I asked her some questions about the difficulties and challenges of playing in Tokyo, playing in the Olympics, and competing for a gold medal. So yeah, it was wonderful to see. Obviously very happy for Team USA, and I'm sure all of Skytown is proud that now Stephanie Dolson can add gold medalist to her resume. What a fantastic moment. Was able to represent the country well, herself well, the team well. Everything was just awesome with the moment, and she played well as well. She definitely was a key factor, grabbed a lot of boards, scored a lot, contributed a lot, especially on a 3x3 team. You really need everyone to be a valuable contributor, and I think everyone on the team did an incredible job, including Jackie Young, who only joined the team recently because Katie Lou unfortunately got COVID and she was unable to participate. Jackie Young went from vacation to, Olympic level competition, and was able to be a key player in that team and contribute well. So shout out to Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, Stephanie Dolson, obviously. And let's not forget Alicia Gray. She was amazing as well. She had some of the games she was just taking over offensively and defensively. There are quite a few games, which again, go to my website, skyintheshy.wordpress.com. You can see breakdowns of all the games, and I talk about kind of who played the best of the best on each individual game. But I think pretty much everyone had a game where without them, you can make the argument the team would lose. So I think overall it was very well balanced, and again, shout out to Team USA as well for creating such a good cohesive unit, because it really felt like they meshed well, they blended well, they played well. There's a lot of chemistry with that team, and it was successful. I'm looking forward to see what continues to happen with 3x3 and how it changes as the years go on heading into the next Olympic cycle. All right, so with Olympics done, everything out of the way, the gold medals won, wonderful moments, but now it's time for what most of us here are excited about, which is the WNBA. And WNBA basketball came back this past week, and the Chicago Sky started off on the right foot. They won 87-85 against the Seattle Storm in their first game back. It was a back and forth game. It was a very competitive match, obviously. The game resulted in a 2-point victory, and the Chicago Sky were able to pull it off and get the victory. Obviously, the Seattle Storm were missing key players. Stewie wasn't there. Sue Bird was unable to play. I think it was, for both of them, it was just the Olympic, turnaround was very quick, and I think they were resting for those reasons. But the Sky still are playing a very good Seattle team, and yes, they were missing 2 stars, but, they still were a good team, and you saw they took them to the distance, but luckily the Sky were able to hold off and get the win in overtime as well. So it was very competitive, very good game. It was on national television, so, hopefully a larger audience did get to see it. And actually, I think it was reported a larger audience did see it. So that was exciting, and that was very good for a regular season game. Just 2 top teams playing against each other, and luckily the Sky came out on top. But as has been the narrative kind of all year with the Chicago Sky, quickly after that win, we had a disappointing loss as the Sky lost 80-76 against the Dallas Wings this past Tuesday. And the game, again, was another close game, but, to me, it was kind of a disappointing game. I don't really feel like there was much positive, especially with the fact that Candace Parker re-aggravated her ankle, the same ankle she injured earlier this season in the third quarter of the game. Now, at the time of the recording of this podcast, which is Thursday morning, there hasn't been a solid update on how significant that injury is. Can she play the next game? Is she game to game, and what does that mean in terms of when will she play again and how healthy is she. We've gotten a lot of just vague information on that. We don't have anything solid, like she's definitely out for the next game or missing 2 games, 3 games, no games. We don't know yet. Obviously that is of concern for the Sky. Injuries have been one of the factors in the struggles this season. Not the only factor, though. So it's something you don't want your star player hurt. You don't want them injured. You want a fair shot, hopefully, at the title. That's all any team wants is to be healthy. I mentioned that in my keys to the season, that injuries are a big factor that we just don't talk too much about because it's kind of is random and just kind of bad luck. But you're hoping that everyone stays healthy. And right now, a little nervous about the Candace Parker injury, but until we get more information, there's no point in speculating about how bad it could be. We're just hoping not too bad, but that's probably the biggest storyline in this game is maybe another key superstar player on the team is going down for a little bit, but time will tell if that's true or if it's just, little too injured to come back into the game. And now it's time for a tough conversation we need to have about this team. So with their 1 win and 1 loss here after the Olympic break, the team is now officially 11-11. They're at 500, which means they've won just as many games as they lost, which to me means mediocrity. And that's a tough thing. When we talked about this team during the beginning of the season, it was a lot of optimism for how good they'll be. Can they win it all? Are they the favorites to win it all? And those were the conversations that were happening because they had a team with multiple superstars, or all-stars actually, and now you're adding a superstar in Candace Parker. How much better is that team going to be? You just added her. You didn't have to trade anyone away. You just paid for her contract, and now she's on the team. And oh my goodness, how good is that going to be? And now we're looking at it, and there have been just as many ups as there have been downs. And yes, early on in the season, you could mention and point out injuries as the main factor as to why things have been so sloppy. They had a 7-game losing streak where Candace Parker missed games, Dolson missed games because of her Team USA obligations, Azurá Stevens missed some games, Allie Quigley had hamstring issues. It was kind of a little bit understandable at the time when they were 2-7 that they're just not healthy and let them get healthy. And then when they got healthy, they did it. They won 7 in a row, got back everything they lost in that streak. It was amazing. Then they were on their way. And since then, it's been you win a game here, you lose a game there. You win a game here, you lose a game there. It's just been mediocre, to be quite blunt. There are moments of brilliance. There are games that are fantastic, like the Seattle Storm victory. And then there are blowout losses against the Sun that are just disappointing. And you just wonder, are they really at that level? Can they get it together in time? I wrote about this for Swish Appeal, as I've mentioned it on my Twitter and everything, but I haven't, talked about it on this podcast because this news happened in between episodes. But I'm officially a writer and contributor to Swish Appeal, so I'll be writing one women's basketball article a week on Swish Appeal. So if you're not already reading Swish Appeal, that's a mistake. Make sure you're reading Swish Appeal. I'm working with them because they do great work. They do great work covering the women's game overall, whether it's international, whether it's WNBA, college basketball. It's always great articles written by fantastic writers, and I'm lucky that they chose me to be one of the writers who is worthy of contributing there. And it's just a great publication. So you'll see some non-Sky articles from me there, absolutely. But you'll also see some Sky articles. And this week I wrote about this. I wrote an article called Can the Sky Still Become Contenders? And really the question about it is, we are only 10 games away from the season being over. There are only 10 games left. And what we've seen, I think at this point we can agree, has been mediocre. And those injuries were from months ago. Those injuries aren't a factor right now. They haven't been a factor in the last 8, 9, 10 games or so, and you're still looking at about a 500 record during that time. So when you really look at it, who is this team? They have all the star power, they have all the pieces, it's not coming together, and I broke down a little bit of why that is besides just bad luck that started the season. Essentially, the issues so far have been figuring out those late game chemistry in those close game matchups. That's where the Sky really are falling short. It feels like they just don't have it down packed on what they do in those final 2 minutes of a game that is close. This has mainly been a strength of James Wade throughout the seasons prior to this one, where the team was really 500 in those games decided by 5 points or less. And actually I wrote in the article that this year they are 1-6 in games decided by 5 points or less. Previous years, I believe they were 3-4, 4-4. So you're more 500. And I know that might sound bad, but in games that are that close, it is kind of a pick-em game. It can go either way. It's just a couple baskets, couple possessions. If you break even, I think that's pretty solid. Matter of fact, if they broke even in those games this year, instead of being woefully on the negative side, losing 6, winning 1, if they were, 3-4 in that, that would give them 2 more wins. And in the WNBA, that's the difference between 6th place and being half a game out of 4th place. And that's a lot of steps there. That's putting you in the upper echelon of the league instead of just in the middle of the pack. And those are differences in having to play 2 single elimination games, having to play road single elimination games in the playoffs. Those things matter. In the WNBA, this year it's only 32 games. That's a very short season. You can't just drop 2-3 games and say, hey, that's okay. That's going to come back to bite you. It's very hard. It's a very tough league. I tell people all the time, it's the hardest league in basketball, including the NBA. It's the hardest. There's just such little room for error. There's less than half the amount of games, so you have a smaller sample size, and the league needs more roster spots, more teams, so the competition's heavy because there are so many quality players. You have to be so good to be in the WNBA. It's even harder to get into than the NBA on a statistical standpoint. So it's a tough league. You can't just drop games, and the Sky have dropped a lot of games in games that were decided by a small margin. That's been, to me, the glaring thing. James Wade, like I said, this has been a strength for him. He's drawn up some incredible late game plays, some incredible last minute shots and good looks. And before, I've never discussed this with him, so maybe it's something I'll ask in future media availabilities. But before, it felt like he already had ideas for ways to get open shots, and it didn't matter to him who the open shot person was. And this year, I feel that's less so. It feels like so far I would have to rewatch all the games to kind of look at this, and this might be actually a good article idea for me on those. Just rewatch all those 1-6 games and what happens and what were their final possessions. It feels like I see a lot of Vandersloot and Candace Parker pick and rolls, but the problem is late in those games I haven't seen them kind of run as effectively. Personally, I think running them effectively is Candace Parker setting a strong screen, and then Vandersloot has to make this decision. Does when Candace Parker rolls back or rolls to the basket, does she pass it to her, or does she try to make a play? Can she swing it to a wing player who's now open based on all the movement that's happened? And I feel like those plays have gone less effectively. It happened again against the Seattle Storm right before overtime. They ran a similar action, and they didn't get a good look. Candace Parker still had a defender on her. The pass wasn't there. Courtney Vandersloot picked up her dribble. She didn't have a good mid-range shot available. And then when it was time for her to kick out to the opposite side, the wing player was also not really open. She did kick it out to, I believe it was Kalia Copper, and she just had the ball very contested. And she had to kick out again to someone else, and they just got like a not great look out of that. And I think those kinds of plays have been an issue. It's not the same. I'm not saying they're the same, but it reminds me of the Miami Heatles when they first started out, because they had so much star power. It was always who takes the last shot, and I feel like that first year they really struggled with those plays. It felt like there's a lot of disorganization at the end of the game about what happens and what's the advantage, and do you just give the ball to someone and let them be the hero because they're that good? And those Miami Heat teams, they lost a lot of those games early because it just felt like they got a bad look at the end of the game versus, getting a good look and getting the look that they wanted. It looked like they didn't know the look that they wanted. And I'm seeing a little bit of that with the Chicago Sky this season. It feels like they get not as good looks late in the game when you have to kind of organize something and really plan on one specific action because there's like 20 seconds left and you have to get the kind of look that you want. So that's something maybe I need to do more research on and see if I really still feel like that way, breaking them all down. But that's what I definitely felt this weekend watching these games. It just felt like they just were ineffective in those close game scenarios, and which is surprising because they were effective last year and the year before that as well. Lots of really great memories of James Wade drawing up plays that worked really well to get a good look late in the shot clock, late in the game when you needed a game winner. Personally, I still believe in the Chicago Sky. I still believe they can be an elite team. I still believe they can win the championship, but clearly they're not the favorites. Clearly there are a few teams in front of them that are way in front of them, record-wise and even in just consistency, repertoire, resume, all those things. I think you need to respect, former champions and the elite teams. And for me, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting respect on the Aces, the Storm, and the Sun. Again, Aces haven't won yet, but we know they made it far. Storm have, many championships under their belt, and Connecticut Suns are a very good team that have also beaten the Sky this year pretty handily earlier in the season. So, I still think it's hard to say they're the top contenders, and I think you can even argue with the record that they're just a mediocre team at this point. But I do believe there is still time. There is still 10 games. We still have roughly a quarter of the season left, a little bit more than a quarter of the season left. So they have time here. There's 10 games, but we're running out of time. There's 10 games to show improve and show, hey, actually, we are that team that everyone said. We are that team that's elite, that's able to lock everyone down, that has a great offense, that has a superstar player when we need to get a bucket. We know where to go, and we're going to be effective, and we're going to be victorious, and we are not a team you want to play in the playoffs. I think there's still plenty of time for them to do that, and I believe they will get it together, but we are running out of time, and that's kind of what the article in my idea just mainly is. It doesn't really matter what I believe, because eventually the results are the results, and sports is a little more black and white than that. You either won or lost your games, and when you look at this team so far, they've split. So it's time. There's 10 games left. It's up to you. Are you going to go on an incredible run, go 7-3, go 8-2, maybe even better, and dominate the league and let the league know that you're a force to be reckoned with? Or are we going to go through another 10 games of mediocrity? You're going to go 5-5, 4-6, maybe slightly better 6-5, and you're going to end up in that 4th, 5th seed, and then then you're just more of a wait and see team. You'll be a team, well, if they win a couple games, they'll get hot. We'll see if they can reach semifinals or further. Or are you a team that's in the front of that group, in that top 4 or so, looking more like a contender and having a more legitimate shot at the title? We're going to find out, and that's what's really exciting with sports. We're actually going to find out. We do talk about all these things. I talk about all these things, but ultimately, the balls get rolled out, and we're going to find out what's what. And we're going to definitely find out what this team has left, because there's 10 games left, and it's show and prove time. So we're going to see what they show us. So when can they show us what they have for us to see? So their next game is Saturday against the Lynx. That's going to be at home here in Chicago. And then Tuesday against the Atlanta Dream. So after Tuesday's game against the Atlanta Dream, the Sky will officially be done with the third quarter of the season. So I'm going to really make sure that I get out the next podcast, actually next week. Usually I do podcasts every 2 weeks, and I space it out that way, but we took a longer break because of the Olympic break, and we're getting kind of near the end here, so I want to make sure we squeeze in the episodes we can. So what I'm going to do for this final run here is we're going to squeeze in one more episode right before we enter that fourth quarter. And for those who've been here this entire year, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And besides that, you already know that I do the review of the team after every quarter of the season, which this year, 32 games divided by 4, that means every 8 games, it's kind of the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, right? And the reason I do that is everyone always says, especially early in the year, oh, why are we talking about MVP? Why are we talking about most improved? It's too early. And my rebuttal was always, well, when is it not too early? And of course, no one has an answer. So I said, you know what? I'm going to look at things from just a Chicago Sky perspective, which is, what would I do on this podcast and on my websites and things of that nature. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? Every quarter, I'm just going to evaluate the team. And if you think it's too early, the data says I don't think it is too early because it's the first quarter, just like school. It's like first quarter report card. It doesn't mean that it can't change. It just means that's where we're at the quarter mark. And where are we at? So I did it for the first quarter, second quarter, and I will do it again for the third quarter. And then for the end of season, I'll actually wait until the season is legitimately over, which can be the end of the season if the team doesn't make the playoffs, which I think that is highly unlikely. If not, it'll be when the season's officially over, which hopefully for any Chicago Sky fans is after they win the championship. So we'll see what happens there. After Tuesday's game against the Dream, they're officially done with the third quarter, and Friday, when they play Seattle, will be the beginning of the fourth and final quarter. 8 games left in the season. So I'm going to squeeze out an episode again next week, Friday, hopefully Friday morning, but it might be Friday afternoon. So depending on when that is, if you listen to this immediately when it's out, then you will hear it right before the first game of that fourth quarter against Seattle, or you'll hear it, immediately after, because I know you listen all the time right away. So just be on the lookout for that. That's what's going to happen here on this podcast, and that's the upcoming games. That before we record again, the Lynx will play the Sky, and the Dream will play the Sky, and then I'll do a podcast updating all of you on what the third quarter awards for the season are. and then we'll kind of preview this fourth and final quarter and then get into the fourth and final quarter. So that's going to be really exciting. And I'm going to kind of reschedule things here after that for September, because September is a wacky month. The WNBA season is going to really ramp up and get to its apex here. So I'm going to make sure we might have to do a few more podcasts. We might have in a few guests here. So far, I haven't had any guests. I've just kind of gotten my feet under me here recording these podcasts, and hopefully all of you enjoy it and have enjoyed it so far. I'm really looking forward to having some guests here, but we're going to figure that stuff out. So I don't know what the September cadence is going to be or the schedule is going to be. It might be a little bit different, but if anything, it'll probably be more exciting because you're more likely going to get more episodes than less episodes, because the games are getting more and more important, bigger and bigger moments, and I'm going to want to cover all of them. So we'll talk after the next two games. Hopefully we're talking after 2 Chicago Sky victories. Hopefully we're talking after Candace Parker has been, A-okay and is either immediately coming back, or it's not going to be a big 7-game, 8-game, season-long injury, and it's a minor injury. That's what all of our hopes are. And hopefully the team can right the ship, because I think the ship does need to be righted. Right now, this is a 500 team. That's just the facts. And I think they're better. I think everyone thinks they're better. But at a certain time, it's time to show and prove that you are in fact better and to actually do it. So I'm hoping they can actually do it very, very soon, so we can see the team we all thought we were going to see all season long. It's not too late. Every goal they have is still in front of them. It's just a matter of, are they going to execute on it? I believe they will. I'm hoping they will. And we're going to find out together. So until next time, this has been the Sky and the Shy podcast, and I'll talk to you next week when we recap the third quarter of the season.